In today's video, you will learn what made America the world leader, what the rivalry between the USA and China is leading to, and the influence that new powers are beginning to have on the world stage. The world is changing, and today, it's happening very fast. After World War II, the most destructive war in human history, the US had the opportunity to gain power and become a world leader. This process wasn't easy, but it was possible due to a combination of economic, political, and military factors that allowed the country to dominate the international arena. Not only victories on the battlefields played an important role in this, but also skillful diplomacy, which allowed the United States to strengthen its position among allies and neutral countries. After becoming such a leader, the USA established its own rules in the fields of trade, economics, and justice. These rules, based on Western philosophical values such as democracy, freedom, and individual rights, spread around the world, creating a new global paradigm. The USA, with its vast number of allies and powerful military capabilities, managed to implement its standards and norms in international relations. This led to the creation of new organizations such as NATO and the World Trade Organization, or WTO, which became the basis for international cooperation and security. These organizations not only contributed to economic growth, but also ensured stability in previously conflict-ridden regions. However, there was a moment when this order was challenged for a while by another great power, the USSR. The Soviet Union acted on the basis of very different values and philosophical beliefs that contradicted the Western model. It traded with the countries of its bloc, creating alternative economic and political alliances, and actively cooperated with its allies, trying to spread its ideas of socialism and communism. This confrontation not only shaped the domestic politics of both countries, but also impacted international relations, forming blocs and alliances around the world. Nevertheless, the United States did everything possible to prevent this competition from continuing for too long. They used both economic and military means to weaken the USSR's power in the international arena. The reasons for this confrontation were clear: the desire to keep their dominant position and to prevent the spread of an alternative ideology that could threaten their interests. As a result, the Cold War became not only a battle for influence, but also an ideological confrontation that determined the course of world history for many decades to come. This confrontation also led to an arms race that drained the resources of both countries and caused tension in international relations. The collapse of the Soviet Union in the 1990s gave the United States and its many allies a unique opportunity to become the sole rulemakers and power holders on the world stage. During this period, the United States acted decisively and confidently. Its value system, based on democracy and free trade, began to actively spread and strengthen around the world. However, when you become a world leader who makes the rules, there is a temptation to choose when to follow your own rules and when not to. Being a global superpower means being a global policeman, which gives you certain obligations and responsibilities. However, the post-World War II period was one of the most peaceful phases in human history. Major countries didn't fight each other as they had in the past. Many countries realized that wars often lead to destruction and loss of economic gain for all involved. Besides, the availability of the most powerful weapons ever developed, which the major nations were hesitant to use against each other, also helped to reduce the likelihood of global conflict. For a long time, the American system meant stability and tremendous volumes of trade, which led to growth in the world economy. However, over time, the world began to change, and new powers started arguing about returning to the previous situation, which cast doubt on the sustainability of the existing system. But today, the world is changing, and these changes are happening at an incredible speed. The system many people have become accustomed to is no longer acceptable to many, partly because of the order established by the United States. China, with its access to global markets, has become the second largest economy in the world and the largest military power in terms of the number of regular troops. This perception underscores the growing discontent and mistrust of American dominance, which encourages China to seek new ways to strengthen its influence in the international arena. In response, China is building its own alternative system intended to challenge the existing order. In March 2023, Chinese leader Xi Jinping announced the launch of a global initiative and stated that countries should refrain from imposing their values and models on others and from fomenting ideological confrontation. Xi Jinping believes it's not right that rules have been invented to benefit only a certain group of individuals and emphasizes the need for a more inclusive and fair system of international relations. He said China's system would be based on common interests, mutually beneficial deals, and alliances, rather than on philosophical values once stated by someone, which are often ignored in reality. Unlike in past decades, today China has the largest army in the world and enough resources to implement this plan, ignoring the rules of the world superpower. It can set its own rules and interact with the world in a very different way, ensuring Chinese interest outside the existing system. This poses new challenges to the international order and requires other countries to rethink their strategies and approaches to global issues. With the growing competition between the United States and China, many countries are beginning to seek a balance to avoid becoming dependent on one side. So today, we are witnessing a rivalry between two superpowers that, for the past 50 years, have been closely tied to each other economically, but are now gradually drifting apart. China is actively tying many countries to itself by investing generously in infrastructure projects around the world, which is turning into real levers of influence. In March 2023, China sent diplomats to the Middle East as part of the first major attempt to reach a peace agreement between two arch-rivals, Saudi Arabia and Iran. This is something the United States has never been able to accomplish, and this fact underscores the weakening influence of the United States in this strategically important region. The U.S. is still on top and will probably stay there as long as it can control the economic and financial system that the world is based on. So far, they have succeeded. But China is challenging the U.S. by actively cooperating with Brazil, Russia, India, and South Africa within the BRICS group to create an alternative economic bloc. These countries represent major emerging economies that could become even more powerful in the next 2 decades. Since its founding in 2009, the BRICS countries have increased cooperation by holding annual meetings, working to create a new development bank to invest in their economies, and coordinating their policies in various areas. Today, the BRICS countries are becoming a serious rival to the G7, but it is important to emphasize that the United States remains the world's leading power with a rich history of achievement and influence. In front of the entire world, the BRICS are creating a second world economy that seeks to be independent of the U.S. Nevertheless, the American economy continues to be the most powerful and innovative, which allows it to maintain a significant influence on global markets. It is likely that 5 years from now, despite the growing number of countries settling accounts in currencies other than dollars, the U.S. dollar will still be the benchmark for international trade and the main source of U.S. credibility. One of the main reasons why some countries are beginning to reject the U.S. dollar is the skyrocketing U.S. debt. However, we should note that this debt is also the result of significant investments in infrastructure, technology, and social programs that ultimately contribute to economic growth and stability. The imposition of sanctions against Russia was an important step to protect international order and a demonstration of U.S. determination to uphold its values and interests. Most countries prefer to stay aside and not take sides with Russia, China, or the Western Bloc. We call these countries undecided, and both China and the U.S. will try to attract these countries to their side in the next few years. However, let's talk about the world's largest economies among such neutral countries. These countries do not want to explicitly take one side or the other based on ideological or political views. In the modern world, where everything is globalized and interconnected, these countries can take advantage of the confrontation between superpowers to provide themselves with the greatest benefits and security guarantees. For example, Brazil is already doing so. Brazil is a major state and a close ally of the United States, which emphasizes the importance of American influence in Latin America. And this does not prevent it from being among the BRICS countries on a par with China. Brazil has refused to supply weapons to Ukraine, which shows its desire to maintain balance and avoid confrontation. In April 2023, Brazil's president traveled to Beijing, where he signed about 20 new agreements in technology, trade, and agriculture. However, it also emphasizes that Brazil values its relationship with the U.S. and seeks a multi-vector foreign policy. India does exactly the same thing, buying a large amount of cheap oil and 50% of its weapons from Russia, while it buys only 25% from Europe. However, we should note that India is also actively developing its own weapons production, including licensed production, which demonstrates its desire for independence and self-sufficiency. In January 2023, Rosa Boron Exports announced the start of production of the Kalashnikov AK-203 assault rifles in India, highlighting the developing cooperation between India and Russia in the field of defense. But at the same time, India's need to maintain a balanced relationship with the United States. Recently, Indian technology companies have received $200 billion in funding from the U.S. for their technology startups. Saudi Arabia, the largest importer of armaments and military equipment in the world, buys almost all of its weapons from the United States. Its share of U.S. exports increased from 7.5% between 2012 and 2016 to 25% between 2017 and 2022. At the same time, the country is reducing its oil supply from the U.S., and today its largest trading partner is China. China and Saudi Arabia signed a strategic partnership agreement at the end of 2022, bringing new opportunities for cooperation in trade and technology. This emphasizes the importance of international relations and mutually beneficial cooperation. In 2023, President Biden even traveled to Saudi Arabia to try to regain the U.S. influence in the region that China has taken from it. Turkey is a NATO member, but that doesn't prevent it from having close economic ties with Russia. Grain deal, supply of gas, grain, oil, and so on. After the imposition of Western sanctions against Russia, the country became a hub for gray imports to Russia. Moreover, Turkey is not going to miss out on benefiting from China's expanding economy. China's One Belt, One Road project passes through Turkey, which creates prospects for attracting Chinese investment in key areas such as transportation and energy. Pakistan, which has strengthened its ties with the U.S. in recent years, is also actively developing trade with China, demonstrating the diversity of international partnerships. For example, China is investing in the construction of the Gwadar port in Pakistan and spending huge amounts of money on a small Pakistani fishing town to win the favor of locals. The United States suspects that one day it may serve as a base for the Chinese Navy in the Indian Ocean. There are even more undecided countries on the African continent. China is providing huge loans to this region and building bridges and ports, mines and railroads to bring these countries into the future Chinese world order and include them in its zone of influence. China is also developing trade here. Total U.S. trade volume with Africa in 2023 was approximately $71 billion, which is significantly less than China's trade with Africa, which reached $282.1 billion, making China's trade with Africa nearly 4 times that of the United States. However, the United States also plays an important role seeking to strengthen its position and maintain stability in the world. In 2023, senior U.S. officials such as Kamala Harris and Anthony Blinken visited Africa, emphasizing the importance of the region to global politics. But the bottom line is that Chinese investments around the world are quickly and effectively helping China make new friends and allies and lay the groundwork for an alternative world order. Of course, the U.S. won't wait for this to happen. They are trying to stop it. Obviously, the United States is engaged in direct confrontation with China, blocking China's access to advanced Western technology in order to weaken China's economic, technological, and military progress. The United States and its allies in Asia, the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Japan, and South Korea surround China with their military forces in the Pacific, spending billions of dollars to place weapons and military infrastructure very close to China. So, we are witnessing that the world is becoming increasingly multipolar, and countries that previously had to choose sides can now use the situation to their advantage. It will result in a massive deglobalization and a loss of the economic, technological, and financial mutual assistance that has taken place over the past 70 years. It's clear that countries will not rush to take someone's side, especially in the context of the growing rivalry between the United States and China. Instead, they will seek to cooperate with all parties, including BRICS and the G7, to maximize their own benefits. However, the tension in the world is visibly growing, and this rivalry may force countries to make a choice at some point. Today, it is clear that the opposing forces are already defined. The United States and China are becoming major players, and many countries no longer want to continue living as before, choosing between two powerful centers of influence. Thanks for being with us. Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the upcoming videos.